Have you ever felt like something was different, but you couldn't explain it? As if there was some kind of wisdom inside you, silent, intense, ancient, that no one around you seems to notice? Sometimes you feel a strange pressure on your forehead, have dreams so vivid they seem more real than reality itself, or even sense things before they even happen. No, you're not going crazy. And you're not fragile either. Maybe what's happening is that your third eye is opening, and that changes everything. What traditional science calls sensory hallucination or extreme sensitivity, Carl Jung saw as a clear symptom of expanded consciousness. Jung believed that within each of us there is a dormant part that, when awakened, completely transforms the way we see the world. And this part is what many call the third eye. Before we dive into this universe of self-knowledge, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel, like it, and activate notifications. This way, you can ensure that you are always connected to content that inspires and transforms. Let's join us. In this video, you will discover the 5 clearest spiritual symptoms that your third eye is awakened, and how this can indicate that you are one of the chosen ones. And no, this is not about being better than anyone else. It is about having a spiritual mission, an inner journey that few have the courage to take. Most feel it, but run away. You will understand why. Brace yourself. Maybe all that stuff you've been called crazy for feeling is actually the biggest sign that your soul is remembering who it really is. Because when your third eye opens, you don't see the world as it is, but as it really works. Have you ever felt different since you were little? Not better, not worse, just different. As if your view of the world was always deeper, more questioning. While everyone seemed to fit into a system that satisfied them, you felt that something was wrong, as if reality was just a superficial layer of something much bigger. If this sounds familiar to you, know that Carl Jung already spoke of people like this. He called it an ancestral archetype. The chosen ones are not myths. They are living symbols, embodied in people who feel this silent calling. From a very young age, you may have realized that superficial matters never fulfilled you. While others wanted toys, status, or distractions, you found yourself looking up at the sky, feeling a longing you couldn't name. This is not neediness. It is memory of the soul. Jung said that each human being carries a collective unconscious, a spiritual heritage, and that some of us awakened to it earlier. These are those who live the hero's journey, the archetype of the initiate, who needs to descend into their shadows to be reborn with consciousness. This feeling of not belonging is not a mistake. It is an invitation. The true, chosen ones are often born into families where they are the odd ones, into schools where they don't fit in, into jobs that seem to suffocate their soul. None of this is by chance. It is a preparation scenario. Jung believed that the process of individuation, that is, becoming who you really are, begins precisely when you recognize that you are out of place, but refuse to adapt completely. Your restlessness is not a weakness. It is a compass. Many of these different people end up being diagnosed with anxiety, depression, attention deficit. But what if it's the other way around? What if the world isn't prepared for your spiritual sensitivity? What if your symptoms are actually signs of an awakening of consciousness? Jung's deep psychology recognized that the soul has its own language, and that ignoring it generates symptoms. In other words, what you feel could be the call of the soul knocking on your door, and not a problem to be solved with silence or medication. Imagine that there is a radar inside you. It picks up subtle energies, information that is beyond logic. This radar manifests itself as inexplicable sensations, powerful intuitions, and even physical discomfort. People like this, with perception beyond the physical, are often the first to notice energetic changes in environments, relationships, or even planetary cycles. Jung would call this archetypal sensitivity. You are not strange. You are precise. And your third eye has already begun to open. Maybe you've tried for years to fit in, to pretend you were normal, to dim your own light so as not to be a nuisance. But deep down, something always pulls you back. A voice inside, sometimes whispering, sometimes shouting, "You don't belong here. You're here for something bigger." This voice is the same one that has inspired mystics, visionaries, and healers throughout the centuries. They've all listened. Some heeded, others ran away. But the voice never shuts up. It is the call of the spiritual journey. And here's the most important point. You've already started this journey, even if you haven't realized it. The simple fact that you're seeking spiritual answers, feeling this existential discomfort, and wanting to understand the signs of your third eye is already a clear symptom that your soul is awakening. And if nothing else satisfies you, it's because you've already started to remember who you really are. When your third eye begins to open, it doesn't signal you with flashing lights or mystical music in the background. It manifests itself silently but intensely, and often uncomfortably. You may start to experience headaches located between your eyebrows, feelings of pressure in your forehead, insomnia, eyes that water for no reason, or even hypersensitivity to light. Traditional medicine might look at this as stress, migraines, or hormonal imbalance. But in reality, these are spiritual symptoms of a third eye opening. Carl Jung explained that every process of awakening involves tension between the ego and the self. In other words, your limited identity is coming into conflict with your awakened soul. This causes friction, and this friction creates symptoms. You are not sick. You are in transition. Like a snake shedding its skin, you are shedding the shell of the old self to be reborn with a vision beyond the veil. And this process, though sacred, can seem confusing or even frightening at first. One of the most common symptoms is constant pressure between the eyebrows. Sometimes it feels like a sharp pain, sometimes like a tingling sensation, as if a magnetic field were activated there. This point has been known for millennia as the Ajna chakra, or the center of spiritual vision. When this area is activated, your body begins to pick up subtle frequencies that most people around you ignore. You begin to feel the environment, people's intentions, the truth behind their words. And all this without knowing how. Another powerful symptom: vivid, symbolic, recurring dreams. As your third eye awakens, your unconscious begins to communicate more clearly. Jung viewed dreams as bridges between your conscious and unconscious mind. And when your third eye is active, these dreams stop being confusing and become true spiritual roadmaps. You begin to dream of eyes, paths, lights, beings, symbols that carry profound messages for your spiritual journey. You may also experience changes in your sense of taste, vision, and even hearing. Louder sounds bother you, artificial smells become unbearable, and noisy environments leave you feeling drained. This is because your energetic sensitivity is increasing. It's as if you've lived for years with dulled senses, and now everything is in spiritual HD. This sensitivity is a gift, but without guidance, it can feel like a burden. That's why learning to filter, protect yourself, and silence yourself is essential at this stage. Many people, when they feel these symptoms, run to doctors, medicines, diagnoses. And there is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes, what needs attention is not the body. It is the soul asking for passage. Jung said that what you resist persists, and that symptoms are the language of the soul. So, instead of medicating yourself to silence these signals, maybe it is time to listen to them. Write them down, investigate them, welcome them. Your body is not betraying you. It is revealing you. And perhaps the most disturbing symptom is the feeling that everything has lost its meaning. Work, relationships, hobbies, as if nothing else fulfills you. This is one of the clearest clues that you are waking up. When your third eye opens, you stop seeking distractions and start seeking direction. This is the beginning of your spiritual journey and the end of your automatic life. Jung called this the process of individuation. I call it the beginning of your mission. Many people hear this word, chosen, and immediately think of privilege, of being better than others. But the truth is quite different. Being one of the chosen is not about status. It is about spiritual responsibility. It is not a title to be flaunted. It is a calling that is heard in the silence, in the pain, in the dreams. And most importantly, you can even try to ignore it, but eventually it will return. Carl Jung said that when we deny the soul, we become sick inside. The calling does not disappear, it just changes form. Maybe you've already felt this. A strange discomfort when doing what everyone else does. A deep anguish, even when life seems okay. As if there were a greater purpose screaming inside you, but without words. And when you try to ignore it, the signs appear. Crises, losses, ruptures, synchronicities. Life takes away what is superficial until only the essential remains. And the essential, almost always, is your spiritual mission. It's as if the universe conspired to wake you up. The chosen are, in fact, those who cannot pretend for long. They even try to live a normal life, but something inside them implodes. They begin to perceive the injustices of the world, feel pain that is not theirs, capture emotions in the air, and have a heightened intuition that guides them even when everything seems uncertain. And then comes the dilemma: follow the call or hide from their own truth. Most choose fear, but some choose the soul. Jung said that ignoring the self, that deepest and wisest part that lives within us, generates a life of repetition, emptiness, and illness. That is why spiritual awakening usually comes with pain. Not because the universe wants to punish you, but because it needs to move you. It needs to remove the old ground so that you stop relying on false things. And when that happens, you no longer have a choice. Either you answer the call, or you live eternally disconnected from yourself. It's important to understand, you weren't chosen because you're better. You were called because you were needed. And that calling takes courage. It will require you to rethink your beliefs, let go of inherited patterns, face the shadows, and embrace a vision beyond the veil. It's a process of inner transformation so intense that many shy away. But those who go through it discover a power that comes not from force, but from the integration of the soul, a kind of quiet authority that comes from alignment with truth. If you are hearing this call now, perhaps through these words, or through persistent dreams, or through your own restlessness, don't ignore it. Start small. Write. Meditate. Reflect. Listen to what the silence is trying to tell you. Every spiritual mission begins with a whispered yes to the soul. And that yes changes everything. It doesn't solve your life all at once, but it opens the invisible path that guides you inward. Ultimately, the call is not a mystical voice that comes from outside. It is an internal echo that only those who are sensitive can hear. And if you have come this far, it is because you are already listening. The next step is not to understand everything. It is simply to admit, I feel something different, and I need to find out what it is. This is the real beginning of the spiritual journey. And from this point on, nothing will ever be the same again. If you've ever felt too sensitive, too emotional, or even too complicated, you've probably carried that burden as a flaw. But what if I told you that this sensitivity is actually your greatest gift? Carl Jung believed that what we call extreme sensitivity is often the heightened perception of the soul, a form of spiritual intelligence. For him, there is no emotional excess without a symbolic cause. And what today seems like fragility may actually be an untapped spiritual superpower. The chosen ones tend to have an energetic sensitivity that goes beyond the ordinary. They pick up on what is not said. They feel the mood of a room as soon as they enter. They sense situations before they happen. And often, they are affected by things that others don't even notice. This can be exhausting when you don't yet know what is happening. But with time and the right awareness, this sensitivity becomes an intuitive radar. You stop being a target of energies and start navigating them wisely. Jung would call this ability elevated intuitive function. In other words, a deep connection with the collective unconscious, capable of reading symbols, energies, and hidden messages. The sensitive person sees what others do not see because they operate at an expanded level of consciousness. And this, far from being a weakness, requires a silent strength. The strength of someone who feels everything, but chooses what to connect with. The strength of someone who suffers through empathy, but does not give up on loving. The strength of someone who sees beyond the physical. If you are one of those people who get exhausted in crowds, who cry without knowing why, or who need to isolate themselves to recharge, know that this is not a dysfunction. It is a sign that your subtle energy is active. You are perceiving the world in deeper layers. And for this reason, you need more silence, more nature, more truth. The chosen ones cannot tolerate falsehood for long, not because they are fragile, but because their souls already reject everything that does not vibrate with authenticity. And there's more. Highly sensitive people are often those who hold the keys to healing. They are artists, therapists, counselors, guides, and healers. Even without training, their energy field can transform environments. This is because their soul was prepared to channel light. But be careful. Without awareness, this gift becomes an overload. Therefore, it is essential to learn how to take care of your field. Techniques such as meditation, energy baths, conscious breathing, and even flower essences can help balance this energy. Jung said that every gift comes with a shadow. and that it is precisely in embracing our shadow that we find true integration. So, if your sensitivity has ever been a source of shame, rejection, or guilt, it's time to rewrite that story. What the world taught you to hide may be exactly what you came to offer. The sensitive person feels more because they perceive more, and those who perceive more can transform more. So the next time someone calls you too sensitive, just smile. You know that this sensitivity is what connects you to your spiritual mission. It's what activates your third eye. It's what reveals the spiritual signals that others ignore. It's not weakness, it's radar. And if you learn to use it wisely, you'll find that your soul is already much more awake than you ever imagined. Have you ever had a dream so vivid that you woke up with your heart racing, feeling like you had lived another life during the night? Those dreams that seem to bring messages, symbols, encounters with strangers, or even versions of yourself. For Carl Jung, this was no coincidence. He believed that dreams are the secret language of the soul, the way the unconscious tries to guide us when the conscious mind is silent. But what if these dreams are even more than that? When the third eye begins to open, dreams cease to be just mental clutter. They become encoded spiritual visions, messages from the soul that bypass the individual's unconscious and touch the spiritual realm. It's as if you've accessed a parallel dimension where everything is symbolic, but also profoundly true. Dreaming about eyes, ladders, mirrors, lights, numbers, portals, flying, or falling are common spiritual symptoms in awakening souls. And each symbol is a map. Jung spoke of the importance of writing down your dreams as soon as you wake up. According to him, symbolic images dissipate quickly, like fog, and if they are not recorded, they are lost. And what is lost in the symbol is lost in the process of self-knowledge. Therefore, one of the most powerful habits for those in the process of spiritual awakening is to keep a dream journal. You don't need to understand everything right now. Just write it down. One day, every detail will make sense. And when it does, your consciousness will expand. Many of the chosen ones report having recurring dreams about lights, beings, wars, children, sacred animals, or even spiritual guides. These elements are not random. They are universal archetypes, symbolic structures that cross cultures and religions. Jung dedicated much of his life to studying this, and he discovered that the more intense the symbolism of the dream, the greater the inner call that is being sent. In other words, the more vivid the dream, the clearer the voice of your soul. If you've been feeling that your dreams are changing, becoming more lucid, more frequent, or more symbolic, it could be a direct sign that your third eye is seeing beyond the physical plane. It's as if your consciousness, while your body sleeps, is trained to see other dimensions. This could include prophetic dreams, encounters with deceased people, or even feelings of déjà vu that come true days later. And yes, all of this is real, even if invisible to most. There is a term in spiritual psychology called initiation dreams. These are intense, often disturbing dreams that mark a spiritual turning point. It is as if the soul receives a clear message. From now on, you can no longer pretend you don't know. These dreams usually come in times of crisis, loneliness, or inner change, and they almost always leave the person impacted for days. If you have ever had a dream like this, write it down. And don't share it with just anyone. Not everyone is ready to hear visions from the soul. So, before you go to sleep tonight, do something different. Put a notebook next to your bed. Ask your soul a silent question. It could be, what do I need to see? Or where should I go? And then just go to sleep. You might be surprised at what comes next. Because sometimes, what you see with your eyes closed is more real than anything you've ever seen with your eyes open. Dreams don't lie. They're just waiting for you to learn to listen to them. There are days when you feel like there is a weight between your eyebrows. A pressure, a slight pain, a kind of strange discomfort that doesn't seem to come from outside, but from within. Sometimes it appears out of nowhere. Other times, it appears when you are reflecting, meditating, or even crying. Most people ignore it. Others rush to the doctor. But those who listen understand. This pain is not just physical. It is the soul trying to push you towards the truth. It is the third eye saying, wake up, there is something you need to see. Carl Jung had a very symbolic view of symptoms. He believed that all pain that the body manifests is a way for the soul to communicate. When the mind doesn't listen, the body speaks. and the place between the eyebrows, also known as the third eye point, has been considered for millennia to be the center of intuition, spiritual vision, and higher consciousness. In other words, when this region hurts, throbs, or gets hot, it's a sign that something is being spiritually activated. And the more you resist, the more intense it becomes. This pain is not random. It usually arises in moments of inner conflict. When you are lying to yourself. When you are forcing a situation that your soul already wants to leave. When you are trying to please the world, but suffocating your own truth. This pressure on the third eye point is a vibrational alert. The body gives you a signal because your soul is tired of waiting. And then you feel it. An uneasiness that seems to say change, even though you don't know where to go. Many people try to suppress these symptoms with painkillers, distractions, or denial. But Jung said something powerful. What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate. In other words, what you ignore repeats itself. The pain you try to erase comes back through another channel. So, instead of fighting this feeling, try listening. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing? What am I avoiding seeing? Sometimes the answer comes immediately. Other times, in a dream. But it does come. Another common sign of this process is tingling in the forehead, a feeling of sudden heat, or even chills in that region. This happens especially during moments of meditation, prayer, or deep intuition. It is as if your soul is pushing the truth from within outwards. This type of symptom usually appears in people who are going through an accelerated spiritual awakening, which means that you are in the process of profound transformation, even if you cannot explain it. It is essential, at this time, to cultivate practices that help alleviate and channel this energy. Guided meditations for the third eye, visualizations with violet or golden light, the use of crystals such as amethyst or lapis lazuli, as well as baths with herbs such as lavender or rue. The important thing is to understand that you do not need to cure this pain, but rather to understand it. It is a messenger, not an enemy. It is in your favor, not against you. So the next time that pain comes, don't despair. Sit quietly, place your hands on the spot on your forehead, and simply say, I am listening. Because when the soul feels that it is being heard, it no longer needs to scream. And slowly, what was pain becomes vision. What was discomfort becomes clarity. And what felt like punishment was actually an invitation from your higher consciousness. Maybe you're going through a tough time, a feeling of emptiness, of disconnection, as if you've lost your footing. Everything seems dull, colorless, meaningless. Friends don't understand you. Family grows distant. What once made sense now seems small. But what if I told you that this isn't the end, but the beginning of a new version of you? Jung called this the dark night of the soul, an essential stage in the chosen one's journey, a moment of symbolic death that precedes spiritual rebirth. In the language of depth psychology, this phase marks the collapse of the ego, that superficial identity built to please others, conform to standards, and seek security. As this structure begins to crumble, the soul finally has room to emerge. It's painful. It's confusing. It feels like you're losing yourself. But in fact, you're finding yourself in a much deeper place. The process of individuation, as described by Jung, is exactly that, letting go of what is false and becoming who you really are. During this journey, it is common to feel alone, but not because the world has abandoned you, but because you are being set apart to be refined. The souls of the chosen ones need to be polished in silence. It is in the absence of noise, distractions, and even praise that you begin to hear your true voice. And it is this voice that will guide you back to the light. But be careful. This light will not come from outside. It will be lit from within. And once lit, no one can extinguish it. Jung said that the shadow, that is, everything we deny within ourselves, needs to be confronted before integration. Therefore, during this period, it is normal for ugly emotions to surface. Anger, sadness, fear, old resentments. This is what he called an encounter with the shadow. And this encounter is not a failure, it is progress. Only those who have the courage to look at their own darkness can activate the true light. The chosen are not those who pretend to be enlightened. They are those who dive into their own abyss and come back with wisdom. This phase is also often accompanied by deep existential questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Does it all make sense? These questions are not a sign of spiritual weakness. They are symptoms of an awakening of consciousness. When the third eye opens, you can no longer accept ready-made answers. You need to experience the truth for yourself, and that requires a type of faith that cannot be learned from books. It can only be achieved through pain and courage. This is why many spiritual masters went through retreats, deserts, prisons, or illnesses before becoming who they were. Not by chance, but by purpose. The soul needs pressure to reveal the diamond it carries. So if everything seems to be falling apart, perhaps it is because your old structure no longer supports the greatness of your new consciousness. And this is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of real spiritual growth. So take a deep breath. You are not being punished. You are being rebuilt. Your soul knows the way. And what seems like confusion today will be clarity tomorrow. Carl Jung said, "There is no awakening of consciousness without pain." And maybe, right now, you are going through exactly what you need to go through to become who you were born to be. Keep going. You are already halfway across the bridge. Have you ever tried to explain what you're feeling and no one understood? Have you ever noticed things that seemed obvious to you, but invisible to others? As if your mind were operating on a different frequency? That feeling can be lonely, I know. You start to wonder if you're overreacting, if you're becoming paranoid, or even crazy. But what if, instead, you were just seeing with the eyes of your soul? Jung said that madness is often just the truth being told by someone no one wants to hear it. The open third eye not only expands spiritual perception, but also awareness of hidden reality. You begin to see patterns in behaviors, unspoken lies, energies in environments, intentions between the lines. And this distances you from many people, not because of arrogance, but because of vibrational incompatibility. What was once comfortable now becomes unbearable. Shallow conversations tire you out. Distractions bore you. You want depth, truth, meaning. But that doesn't always have an audience. This is where many chosen ones suffer, because they have not yet understood that isolation is sometimes protection. That spiritual solitude is a prerequisite for expanding consciousness. You need to empty yourself of the noise of the world to hear the whisper of your soul. And when you begin to see what no one else sees, you disconnect from everything that was automatic, old friendships, lifestyles, even repetitive thoughts. You are not losing, you are freeing yourself. Jung wrote that the privilege of life is to become who you really are. But this privilege requires courage. Seeing beyond the veil means letting go of illusion. And most people prefer the comfort of lies to the pain of truth. That's why those who awaken are often labeled as strange, exaggerated, too intense. But know this, every awakened soul goes through this stage. It's the moment when you realize that it's not you who's seeing too much. It's the world that's still seeing too little. At this stage, it is important to find references, anchors, and practices that help you to establish yourself in this new perspective. Read authors such as Carl Jung, Eckhart Tolle, Neville Goddard. Write about what you feel. Connect with sincere spiritual communities. Meditate with a focus on expanding your consciousness. And above all, trust what you feel. Your intuition is wiser than 1,000 external opinions. Do not doubt the truth that is emerging within you just because it is still invisible to the eyes of others. Remember, Jesus was rejected. Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth. Jung was ridiculed by many. They all saw what the world did not want to see. And they all, in some way, transformed reality with their vision. The same can happen to you. Your clarity is a gift. And the more you honor it, the stronger it grows. Don't try to fit where your soul no longer fits. Expand. Break through, awaken, and when you feel too alone, repeat Jung's phrase. He who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens. You have already started looking inside. You have already started seeing beyond. And from now on, nothing will be erased. Because once the truth is seen, it can never be unseen again. After everything we've discussed, tell me honestly, how many of these signs have you felt on your skin? And how many of them did you think were problems? Maybe you've spent your life trying to fix yourself, when in reality, you were just waking up. This is the paradox of the chosen. On the outside, they seem in crisis. On the inside, they are flourishing. You're not going crazy. You're remembering. You're aligning with a higher consciousness, a perception beyond the physical, a spiritual mission that's always been there, just dormant. The symptoms of an open third eye are not illnesses. They're the silent confirmation that your soul is active. And those who feel it know, There's no going back. Once you see it, you can't pretend you didn't see it anymore. But it's not enough to understand. You have to apply it. So I ask you, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to continue to ignore the signs? Or are you going to honor them as the spiritual compass that they are? The choice is yours, and yours alone. But remember, the chosen ones are not those who understand everything. They are those who have the courage to continue, even without understanding. Because they feel, because they trust, because they know that there is something greater guiding all of this. If these words touched something deep inside you, it's because you're already on the path. Transformation doesn't start with answers. It starts with an awakening of questions. Keep searching, keep feeling, keep honoring this invisible journey that only your soul understands. If this message spoke to your soul, comment below with the word spiritual awakening. That way, I know you've heard the call and you're ready for the next step. And of course, subscribe to the channel, leave your like and activate notifications, because together, we will continue exploring the mysteries of the soul, consciousness, and mission of the chosen ones.